The Variety report being like, of course, what would you do when you have this narcissistic nightmare trying to ruin a film?
It started with a princess and ended with career damage, internet wars, and a studio scrambling to cover its tracks. This Snow White remake didn't just flop, it set Disney on fire from the inside out. When Disney first announced a live-action Snow White, most people assumed it would be an easy win. It's one of the most iconic fairy tales of all time, beloved across generations, with a track record of emotional depth and visual magic. But this remake, it's become a warning sign, a case study in how fast you can ruin a legacy when you stop listening to your audience. And leading the charge into chaos was Rachel Zegler, an actress who went from Hollywood's rising star to public enemy #1 before the movie even came out. We're talking viral backlash, quote-unquote woke debates, angry fans, even producers throwing shade.
It has proven to be Disney's worst investment ever in the history of Disney investments. I mean, they've gone through various scandals with this girl.
And through all of it, Disney stood by, watching the glass coffin crack. So how did it all go this wrong? How did one of the most innocent stories in film history turn into a full-blown cultural battlefield? Let's start where things really began to spiral. Rachel's casting.
If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what?
Smart.
Pay her a couple $1,000,000, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role.
When Rachel Zegler landed the role of Snow White, it should have been a Cinderella moment. She was fresh off West Side Story, getting critical love for her voice, her screen presence, and that effortless charm. It looked like Disney had found their next leading lady, but it didn't take long before everything started unraveling. First, the backlash was quiet. A few people online questioned if Rachel matched the traditional image of Snow White. That's whatever. Disney's done colorblind casting before. But then, Rachel started talking. And when she talked, she did not hold back. She called the original Snow White creepy. She said it was no longer 1937. She claimed the prince was basically a stalker, and that her version of Snow White wouldn't be dreaming about true love.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
In other words, she pretty much torched the source material on camera, and this wasn't once or twice. It happened over multiple interviews, at press junkets, during red carpet events. Clips of her dragging the original film started circulating on TikTok and Twitter like wildfire. Fans weren't just annoyed, they felt disrespected. The very movie that made Snow White iconic, the one that literally built Disney's empire, Rachel was treating it like outdated garbage. And that's when people started switching sides. From excited to, nah, this ain't it. But the story didn't stop with a few bad interviews. That was just the beginning. The thing about Snow White is, it's not just some old cartoon. The original 1937 film is a cultural monument. It was the first full-length animated feature in history. It pioneered storytelling, art, and even how movies were made. So when Rachel Zegler, the new Snow White, starts publicly mocking that legacy,
She has this underlying anger and hatred in her that always has to take it like one step too far.
you're gonna ruffle feathers. And oh, did she? She admitted she had only watched the original once, and even then, she said it creeped her out. She didn't like the romance. She didn't vibe with the themes. Basically, she had no nostalgia for the things she was now starring in. And then came the Variety interview, the one that really lit the match. She sat down next to Gal Gadot, smiling and confident, and said her version of Snow White was about leadership, not true love. The message was clear: this wasn't your mom's Snow White. This was a new era, and she was done with the old fairy tale vibes. The internet went nuclear. Some viewers said it felt like she didn't even want to be in the movie, like she was embarrassed by the original and saw herself as above it. And when she laughed off the prince as a weird stalker, it hit a nerve. Disney fans grew up with that love story. They loved the gentle, hopeful version of Snow White who found strength in kindness.
This is Rachel Zegler, who Disney decided would be brilliant in casting because, as Rachel Zegler says, her millions of fans will line up no matter what she does to see her.
And now, their new Snow White was acting like it was all a joke? Critics called it the ultimate miscast. TikTok was flooded with edits of Rachel's worst quotes, overlaid with sad music and Disney clips. YouTubers dropped full essays with titles like "Why Disney's Snow White is Doomed" and "Rachel Zegler just ended her career." And it didn't help when David Hand, son of the original Snow White director, came out publicly and said Walt Disney would have hated this version. That was a headline that echoed everywhere. But as messy as that was, things were about to get worse. Because this remake wasn't just rewriting characters, it was rewriting the cast. Now, here's where Disney really fumbled the bag. You can change the dress, you can modernize the storyline, but if you're gonna do Snow White without the dwarfs, you're already asking for chaos. And that's exactly what Disney did.
Look at this acting.
That at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
In early production, they revealed that the classic 7 dwarfs were being replaced with magical creatures. They said it was to avoid reinforcing stereotypes, trying to get ahead of the backlash before it happened. But the backlash still came, and not the way they expected. Peter Dinklage, famous for Game of Thrones, went on a podcast and slammed the original story, saying it was backward and offensive. But instead of starting a thoughtful conversation, it triggered a whole different storm. Because actors with dwarfism responded, like, wait, what? Those roles were our opportunities. 7 iconic roles in a massive Disney film, and now they're gone. People online were torn. Was Disney being progressive, or were they just erasing jobs for the people they claimed to protect? Then, the concept art leaked, and it was bad, really bad.
I'd say that this is one of Disney's biggest regrets ever. I mean, I checked, we've discussed it before. I checked Rotten Tomatoes, and the score is even lower than the last time we talked.
The magical creatures looked like AI-generated goblins. Weird proportions, no heart, no charm, just awkward, low-res chaos. The memes wrote themselves. People said it looked like a fake movie, like an SNL sketch. Disney tried to walk it back, saying the art wasn't final, that they were still exploring options, but it was too late. Fans already decided this wasn't Snow White. It was some strange imitation, and you can't call it a live-action remake when half the cast is pixelated beyond recognition. But even with the dwarfs gone, the tension still wasn't at its peak, because the culture war was just getting warmed up. The moment Rachel said it's no longer 1937,
other movie companies are going to look at her and they're going to say box office poison. And a lot of this is due to her behavior leading up to the film's release.
she unlocked a whole new level of controversy. Like, political commentators started using her interview in monologues. Entire YouTube channels that don't even cover movies were suddenly talking about Snow White. Fox News, talk shows, podcasts everywhere. Suddenly, this movie wasn't just a remake, it was a symbol of Hollywood going too far. It's like the Not My Snow White and Woke White trended daily. Comment sections were a battlefield. Even people who supported diverse casting were like, okay, but did you have to insult the original to prove a point? Progressive outlets tried to frame it as overdue representation.
Uniquely unlikable, but then it is actually a terrible film as well. So it's the double whammy.
They said Rachel brought needed change, but even then, you could feel the tension. This didn't feel like an evolution. It felt like a rejection of the past. And the worst part? Rachel was right in the center of it. Whether she wanted to be or not, she became the face of a war she never really asked for. And Disney? They went completely silent. By now, Disney was in full-blown panic mode, but you'd never know it from the outside. Publicly, they tried to act like everything was fine. The promos kept rolling, the release date stayed locked in, and no one at the studio said a word about the backlash. But behind the scenes, it was messy. Reports started leaking that Disney execs were actually reconsidering the release strategy. Some insiders claimed they wanted to push the movie straight to Disney Plus to soften the damage. Others said they were debating a full marketing pivot, downplaying Rachel entirely and focusing on the visuals. And suddenly, Gal Gadot disappeared from the promo trail. This was the evil queen, the second lead, the big-name star they should have been leaning on. But she was just gone. People noticed.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
And then the rumors started. Whispers about tension between Gal and Rachel, that they didn't get along, that Gal didn't agree with the film's messaging, that she was distancing herself from the chaos. Whether true or not, it added another layer to the disaster, and fans ate it up. The vibe was clear. Disney wasn't confident in their movie anymore. They were just trying to survive the release window without taking on more damage. But Rachel wasn't done making headlines yet. As the release date crept closer and the internet piled on, Rachel tried to change her tone. The same woman who dismissed the 1937 version, suddenly she was praising it, saying she was honored, talking about how much the story meant to her. The internet's reaction? Too late. Her clips were already viral. Her quotes had already become memes. No matter what she said now, it came off as damage control. Then, Variety dropped a bombshell. Disney had allegedly hired a social media handler just to manage Rachel's image during the rollout. Yup, an actual professional was brought in to help her stop digging the hole deeper. And to be fair, she was in a near impossible position.
The controversies surrounding Disney's Snow White remake show that we are still in the thick of the culture wars.
Anything she said was picked apart, edited out of context, and spun into the next outrage cycle. Even when she was trying to defend the cast or talk about the craft, the internet just wanted sound bites. But one of the biggest hits to her public image came when she made a comment during the SAG-AFTRA strike. She said actors should be paid for every minute a film is streamed, especially after spending 18-hour days in costume. Supporters praised her for standing with labor. Critics called her entitled and out of touch. That clip alone got tens of millions of views, none of them helpful. The more she spoke, the worse things got. And while she was getting roasted in the comments, Hollywood insiders started treating her like a liability. Enter Jonah Platt. His father worked on the Snow White remake, and he went on record saying that Rachel's behavior was hurting the film. He basically accused her of sabotaging the whole thing, and once someone inside the circle spoke up, the floodgates opened. Behind closed doors, people were calling Rachel box office poison. Word spread that casting directors were backing away. There were even rumors she'd lost offers for roles that were almost locked in. And then came The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, a massive franchise opportunity. Rachel played the lead, but even that got caught in the crossfire. Hunger Games fans were split. Some loved her casting.
And then Rachel Zegler plays Snow White. I think Gal plays the. I was not a child, so I don't follow.
Others couldn't see past the Snow White drama. The mood shifted fast. A year ago, Rachel Zegler was the next big thing. Now, she was a risk, a PR hazard, and to make things worse, the movie finally dropped. After all the build-up, all the leaks, all the interviews, the film finally hit theaters, and it was exactly what people feared. Yes, the visuals were polished. Yes, Rachel could sing. Yes, there were emotional beats, but the heart, the magic, the reason people loved Snow White in the first place, it was gone. There was no prince, no love story. The dwarfs were unrecognizable. The animals, CGI placeholders. The tone was heavy, almost preachy. It felt like a lecture wearing a tiara. Rachel's performance was technically strong, but cold. Critics said she lacked warmth, that her Snow White felt distant, more like a rebel queen than a hopeful dreamer. Even Gal Gadot, who tried to bring some sparkle as the evil queen, got buried under a script with no soul. And the audience? They noticed. TikToks were showing people walking out. Theater seats were empty.
And Rachel Zegler, being 23 or whatever she is, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution.
Rotten Tomatoes was a battlefield. And on social media, the consensus was brutal. This wasn't Snow White. This was something else entirely. By the time opening weekend ended, Disney had a much bigger problem on their hands than one failed film. They had an identity crisis, because this wasn't just about Snow White, this was about what Disney had become. A studio once known for wonder, heart, and timeless stories, now reduced to culture war clickbait and corporate messaging. People weren't mad that it was modern, they were mad that it was soulless, that it prioritized agendas over characters, that it tried to say something but forgot to feel something. Audiences are tired of reboots that feel like fan fiction. They want story, emotion, escape, and this film gave them none of it. Snow White, 2025 pounds, didn't just flop. It exposed how far Disney had drifted from the very magic that built it. So where does this leave Rachel Zegler? Where does this leave Disney? Rachel is still young. She's still insanely talented. And maybe, just maybe, with the right project and the right script, she can bounce back. But the margin for error? It's gone. She's officially on Hollywood's watch list now. And Disney, they have to decide. Are they going to keep pumping out remakes with focus group scripts and zero heart? Or are they finally going to listen? Because if Snow White taught them anything, it's this. You can't remake a classic by tearing it down. Nostalgia isn't your enemy. It's your foundation. And if you ignore it, audiences will do exactly what they did with this movie. Walk away.